Now, the last year has been a difficult year, and I'm not going to deny that. It's been difficult for Europe and it's been difficult for Nigeria as well. We've seen lives and we have seen livelihood severely impacted. I mean, just look at the dire economic situation for so many ordinary Nigerians. But in spite of those circumstances, we have also seen a year where the partnership between the European Union and Nigeria has really grown to new dimensions. And I think that is worth celebrating in spite of the circumstances. So here we are today. Allow me just to say a few words of introduction, and then I hope, as always, that you feel inspired, to make your comments and questions and as well towards the end. First, just another word on Team Europe. Team Europe was created in the middle of a global pandemic. But one of the first and to date most notable examples and results was actually the support provided to Nigeria. We managed to mobilize very swiftly an additional support of 50 million euros to Nigeria that was launched last year, and we saw how that could support the rollout of the presidential task force and, of course, supporting the making available medical equipment, palliatives, and generally supporting the bold but important policy choices that were made. This week, we wish to announce that we will avail the remaining 14 million euros of that fund to the vaccine rollout in Nigeria and to support, in particular, having equitable access to vaccines and to have a better risk communication. So this is on top of the very significant support that the European Union has been providing to the rollout of vaccines globally, with more than 2.2 billion euros being availed, and an additional 100 million euros that just last week was announced for Africa in particular. And let me pause by saying that no other region in the world has exported as many vaccines as Europe. 188 million doses and counting. And we have granted more than 700 export permits since the crisis began. Now, I know that leaving nobody behind has to be the center stage of our EU policy, and that certainly goes for Africa. We understand, and this has been expressed by our senior leadership again and again and again, that if the situation is not handled well in Africa, then nobody will be safe. And just look at what is going on in India as we are speaking now, looking at those really alarming images of so many falling ill. So time has not come to relax just yet. And I know as well there's been a lot of debate about vaccine security in Europe and of course in Nigeria as well. And that is fair because we all need to feel secure. But I think we also need to pause and recognize the amazing achievements done by political establishments together with the scientific community and of course the private sector as well. It is really unprecedented to see the development and deployment of vaccines in such a record time globally, even if we are not there yet. And I know there's been a lot of debate around particular vaccines as well, and of course AstraZeneca is one of them. And AstraZeneca being the vaccine available in Europe to a large degree and also in Nigeria, maybe it's worth just adding one or two reflections on that. Now, the European medicines authorities have said and repeated that the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine far outweighed the risks. And that is the situation why also in Nigeria this is being used now. And I do wish to say, just for the record, that yours sincerely, as Ambassador of the European Union, very gladly accepted the generous offer by the Nigerian authorities to be vaccinated here with my first jab just a few days ago with AstraZeneca, because what is good enough for Nigeria is certainly good enough for me. I waited my turn in the queue, and took the vaccine when it was available for me as well. Now, the last year has been a great year for political collaboration between the EU and Nigeria as well. We have had 2 meetings between President Buhari and our Council President Michel, albeit virtually, and we have had a number of encounters between different commissioners and their counterparts in Nigeria. And this all culminated on the 18th of November last year, where we had a record attendance to a ministerial meeting between Nigeria and the EU with 11 Nigerian ministers, and on the European Union side with our Vice President, High Representative, and several commissioners as well. Here we agreed on a full suite of different new initiatives, really getting the collaboration to another level. And these include restarting negotiations on migration and mobility. You know that this is a top priority for Europe, and I think for Nigeria as well. Also promoting a new investment facility, and this was consolidated when there was a conversation between our Executive Vice President Dombrovskis and Vice President Osinbajo just a few weeks ago. And finally, strengthening our support for security in Nigeria and making sure that there are opportunities for all, in particular for youth. A notable success story on youth in the past month is making sure that a record number of Nigerian students were selected for the Erasmus Plus scholarship program. In fact, we doubled the number of Nigerian students this year, and that's a great achievement during times of a pandemic, and that is putting Nigeria right at the very top worldwide amongst the 5 countries that had most students selected. And of course, in the meantime, as my colleague will be able to confirm, we have rolled out just about all the foreseen development cooperation programs, amounting to almost 800 million euros during the recent financial framework. And the same applies for our humanitarian support, amounting to 285 million since 2014, and including 44.5 million just last year, and an indication of an additional 37 million euros only in 2021, and more is being considered. On the trade side, in spite of a global decline, and we need to recognize this, trade figures are generally going down. In spite of that, the European Union remains the biggest trading partner for Nigeria, with 20.4% of the total trade with Nigeria with the world in 2020, and we remain as well the biggest investor to Nigeria when we look at the EU and member states combined. And let me just halt there and say 1 or 2 words on the economy, because I know that this matters to all Nigerians. And indeed, getting back on track requires a diversification of the economy and bringing in more investments. A lot has been done in Nigeria to improve competitiveness, and that has to be commended and recognized, but more can be done. Predictability is key for investors and for businesses. So is the access to foreign exchange. And we know that the restriction of the use of foreign exchange for certain imports in Nigeria is a government policy, having substitution and backward integration strategies in place, but we must recognize that having better access to foreign currency is a vital condition for bringing in more investments. Trading across borders, as we are now starting to see the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, improving Nigeria's competitiveness will be vital. The World Bank is stipulating that in 2020 Nigeria ranks number 179 out of 190. That can be done better. And of course, security matters for investments as well. And I will come back and speak a bit more in detail about the security situation that I know is on everybody's mind. intellectual property rights is a very important part of the solutions when looking at how to attract more investment as well. Of course, having the necessary legislation in place, but also seeing an implementation that is fully respectful of those companies and investors that have invested a lot in developing their products and their brands as well. And then finally on infrastructure, the port efficiency and the sometimes burdensome customs procedures alongside the need for having access to clean and sustainable and affordable energy for businesses in Nigeria is of course a vital precondition. Now the European Union is there to assist and help the Nigerian partners on all of these matters. And then of course we collaborate on so many other issues, having a greener, a more digitalized economy, investing in human development, and addressing the explosive population growth in Nigeria. Now, let me just dwell with 2 or 3 of the key political priorities. And one, of course, is the security situation. Now, we have seen a deterioration of the security situation in Nigeria, clearly and adversely affecting all citizens of the country. This is recognized by the government, this is recognized by the National Assembly, and it's recognized by civil society, but certainly it's also recognized by the international community in general and the EU in particular. The Northeast, of course, is a case in point. We are looking at a protracted crisis well beyond a decade, 12 years and counting, that is impacting too many people. And recent clashes has demonstrated that a stronger and more comprehensive response is needed, combining, of course, military action, but also providing access to justice and opportunities for return to normalcy through reintegration programs such as Operation Safe Corridor, and seeking political solutions as well. And I know this is not easy, but I'm convinced that it is necessary. All while, of course, giving free access to humanitarian aid and addressing some of the root causes that have fueled the conflict in the first place. Now, Commissioner Lenarčič, who was here just a year ago, and some of you will have attended the press conference then, made a statement to this effect just a few days ago, saying, and I quote, "Overall, the EU is following with deep concern the recurrent violent attacks by non-state armed groups. The life and security of civilians is in danger. Humanitarian premises have been destroyed and humanitarian workers are deliberately targeted. Because of the recent increase of violence in the northeast Nigeria, hundreds of thousands of vulnerable people will be left without assistance in the area where humanitarian assistance was already struggling to reach those in need. The EU strongly condemns such attacks and calls on all parties to respect international humanitarian law and to safeguard human rights. All parties should allow people caught in violence to move freely to safe places and should facilitate unimpeded passage of humanitarian relief for civilians in need." And the Commissioner goes on to recognizing how this violence has created food insecurity for an estimated 9 million people in Nigeria. But we are not only dealing, of course, with challenges in the northeast. In the northwest, we have also seen with growing concern the examples of violent clashes between herders and farmers, armed banditry, castle rustling, and kidnappings, including, maybe most sadly, the kidnapping of school children. So the European Union has taken the initiative to mobilize the international community on the northwest as well, and we have brought together some of our key partners, including the United Nations and some of the bigger bilateral embassies here, to see what can be done from the international community to assist this situation. And we have reached out to all our counterparts here, including as well the governors of the Northwest, to have a joint and comprehensive approach. In the Middle Belt, we have seen upsurge of violence during the past years as well. Now, the EU did support, ahead of the 2019 elections, the National Livestock Transformation Plan. And I think that was a quite astonishing achievement by the Nigerian leaders at that point in time, bringing together governors across the political divide from APC and PDP alike, even if it was just before the elections. But I must say that more can and should be done to implement this in practice. If not, we will continue to see the upsurge of violence, as we have seen just in recent days in places like the Niger State and Benue and Kaduna and many other places. And then, of course, we have seen fresh and recent attacks or violence in the southeast as well. And we must not forget the Niger Delta either, where the EU has been working intensively for a number of years. In fact, we have had more than 3,000 small projects operationalized in the Niger Delta to address some of the root causes of the violence that we have seen there in the past. Now, linked to the Niger Delta, and this is an increasing concern and a great priority of the EU, we have seen the increase of maritime insecurity in the Gulf of Guinea. Experts will tell us that some 40% of all piracy incidents globally last year took place in the Gulf of Guinea, and a staggering 95% of global kidnappings at sea took place in the Gulf of Guinea. A great proportion of those in Nigerian territorial waters. And this is having a negative impact on all of us, and in particular the ordinary Nigerians, because this is adding a price tag to all the goods that are entering Nigeria. And that is why we commend the Nigerian authorities for grabbing this bull by the horns. And we work very closely with the Navy, and we work closely with NIMASA and other entities in Nigeria to support to our best ability. And as part of that wide support, including as well development cooperation for a number of initiatives, on the 25th of January, we launched what we call Coordinated Maritime Presences, CMP. This is not a military operation as such, but it is making sure that those vessels, that those naval assets coming from European Union member states operating in the Gulf of Guinea will be better coordinated, and that information will be shared amongst them and with the Nigerian authorities. Currently, 5 EU countries have assets in the region, including France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Denmark. So overall, Nigerians deserve to be safe, and security is a prerequisite for development. You cannot have one without the other. And Nigerian children must be able to go to school without fear. And all citizens, and women in particular, must live their lives without being exposed to heinous crimes. So let me build bridge then to the issue of sexual and gender-based violence and the rights of women. You've heard me saying before that we have seen in the past year a pandemic within the pandemic. I think we all feared from time to time opening your newspapers or watching the news to see what new stories would we hear, of crimes committed against women or girls, or on some occasion boys as well. However, on the positive side, I think the response has been overwhelming. There's been a genuine outcry from the Nigerian population, and we have also seen a strong response from the authorities. This has all been assisted by the EU together with the United Nations in particular. And you may have heard about the Spotlight initiative that has been very active in this field. So we've seen the President speaking out and creating the Interministerial GBV Management Committee. You saw the governors declaring a state of emergency as well. But now it's time to walk the talk, because GBV is not only linked to the pandemic, it's probably the longest lasting pandemic we have ever had in world history, as a matter of fact. So there are great international and Nigerian best practices that can be used at state level. This takes combining having sexual assault referral centers in place, having in place as well the Domestication of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act and the Child Rights Act, and finally having at state level as well registers for sexual offenders so that justice can prevail. And to monitor and follow up on this, we have created a barometer that I hope that you will all have a look at, where it's possible to see what is the state of play in each state. And a lot of progress has been made. Between 2015 and 2019, only 4 states actually approved or domesticated the VAP Act. But since then, we have seen just in 1 year, 14 additional states subscribing. But there's a long way to go. And it is my humble hope that no one will run for office in 2023 or even before then, where there will be elections in Anambra and elsewhere, without having on top of the agenda the promotion of rights for women and girls. So since I mentioned 2023, let me just add 1 or 2 reflections on democracy and electoral reform in particular. You may recall that the EU has for many years supported the democratic consolidation in Nigeria. We have provided more than 100 million euros in support for all the key partners here, whether INEC, the National Assembly, civil society, or the political parties for that matter. And we have seen some important results. This year, we are approaching the midterm evaluation of the observation mission that we had in the 2019 elections. And they provided, as you may recall, a catalog of recommendations. Later this year, they will come and have a look at those. I fear that I have to say that at this point, we are not on track. That would be the conclusion, if the European Parliament would come and have a look today. And much depends on the successful outcome on the negotiations on a new electoral bill. And I cannot emphasize enough the importance that this is done as soon as possible. Because as you approach elections, the politicking kicks in. It's not only like that in Nigeria, it's like that in my country and everywhere else. So if we are to have a successful outcome on the ongoing dialogue on electoral reform, it needs to be done sooner rather than later. And a lot is at stake, of course. As you heard Professor Yakubu saying just yesterday, and I will meet him this afternoon again to share strategies and insights on this, INEC needs time to implement new reforms. This is not done from one day to the next. And it's no coincidence, of course, that ECOWAS has a 6-month provision for that. And you will all recall how the president felt obliged not to assent the electoral reform bill ahead of the last elections because of the proximity to the upcoming elections. So this is absolutely vital. And it has to do with the credibility of the elections and the belief amongst voters in the democratic system in Nigeria. That is so vital. And it's about having genuine participation of all, including so-called vulnerable groups. Nigeria is ranking, unfortunately, rock bottom when it comes to women's participation in politics, alongside what is today called Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. Nigeria is a leader on the continent, on the international stage, and it simply cannot be that the representation of women in governing bodies is so low in 2021. I see a lot of ongoing debate here, some creative ideas, adding, affirmative action in terms of identifying certain seats for women at the National Assembly, or maybe adding a number of women, maybe having a threshold of women and men alike, so that nobody can claim that there is a preferential treatment of one sex over the other. It's not for us to prescribe what should be the modality, but we have to say that the international community, and the EU in particular, is watching with concern that so few women are represented in power at state and federal level alike. The same goes for youth as well, and of course people with disabilities. But there is a window of opportunity, but that window is open now and could be closed when you get closer to the elections again. So all of these issues, security, inclusivity, building democracy, human development, are supported by our development cooperation programs. And we are currently laying the cornerstones of what should be our priorities for the future. Here we have consulted, of course, our Nigerian counterparts at all levels, including at the ministerial meeting that I mentioned before, but also addressed representatives of 180 civil society organizations to get their insights, and building as well, on the collaboration with our member states, 19 of which are represented in Nigeria. We have come up with 3 initial major priorities for the coming years. One is green and digital economy. And this area is chosen for the excellent prospect for job creation for youth and addressing climate change, which is in return, of course, also a driver of conflict. And the opportunity to work with the dynamic and very sort of entrepreneurial resource base that we have in Nigeria, world-class as it is. The second priority is peace and governance, for the obvious reasons that I mentioned before. Without peace and good governance, none of our other achievements or ambitions will be met. And finally, human development. That's the similar argumentation. We need to invest in people. And as you see, a population growth equivalent every year to the total population of my country, Denmark, it's really a no-brainer that a lot needs to be done in investing in access to basic social services in Nigeria, a country that has unfortunately grown to have the largest population worldwide of people living in extreme poverty, a large population of children out of school, death mortality rates are staggering as well, and so forth. Now, all of these 3 priorities all address as a cross-cutting issue the matter of youth. And this will be my last message today. In a country where 60% of the population is under the age of 25, we must listen to the youth, whether the democratic processes within Nigeria, but we need to practice what we preach. So we have decided to launch this month, where we celebrate Europe Day, a new youth sounding board in Nigeria. This will echo a similar boards being established globally, where, by the way, a lot of young Nigerians have applied to participate. Now, this board will constitute of 25 young Nigerians based on their merit and their experience and their voice to promote the rights of youth. And they will have an oversight role for the European Union in Nigeria. They will be given the possibility to scrutinize and criticize and suggest how we can do things better here to support the youth. So we are launching today for all interested Nigerians to apply to be part of this board for an initial period of 2 years. And of course, we will lead by example by making sure that there will be equal representation between women and men, and seeing a great reflection as well of all the geopolitical zones of Nigeria, religious groups, ethnic groups, etc. Dear colleagues, friends from the media, this brings me to an end. Apologies if I took a bit long, but I had something on my heart that I really wanted to stress here. It nevertheless only scratches the surface of what the European Union is doing in Nigeria. Now, this is also a time where my tenure is coming to an end. I've been in Nigeria for almost 4 years, and I wish to thank you, and I see a lot of familiar faces around here, for the excellent collaboration that we have had with the media over those 4 years. Nigeria is really an amazing, a marvelous country. I mean, my time here has clearly been the highlight of my career. So I just wish to say one last time that what is good for Nigeria is good for the European Union as well, and Nigeria matters very much to us. So thank you very much for your attention. And then I will ask Modestus to orchestrate if you have questions or comments. And of course, you know, my colleagues may wish to add their contributions as well to those questions and comments. Thank you.
So if you have the floor now, what you will do is
The end of the day. But I think for what it's worth, there is a very important recognition by the top leadership of Nigeria telling the international community that we need a helping hand to overcome some of the security challenges here. And I think that is quite vital. And that links quite well to some of the other questions, including, you know, what could or should be done that is not being done at this point in time. So when I arrived to the country, there seemed to be a belief that there was a solely military solution to the security challenges in the Northeast in particular. And I think we have all traveled and come to understand, and that applies to the Nigerian government as well, and all the other key stakeholders here, that you do need a comprehensive approach. You do need, of course, a strong military response, and probably an improved military response as well. But you need to combine that with a number of issues, including putting in place modalities for guaranteeing safe returns of internally displaced. They have a right to go back to their communities, but they need to go back to their communities without being exposed to new dangers. There needs to be a political dialogue as well. And with that, I'm not saying that, you know, we should pardon terrorists. We need to, you know, clamp down on terrorism at all price, but there needs to be a justice system kicking in so the culprits are brought to justice, whereas there must be a reintegration opportunity for larger communities. And this is being done by Nigeria with support of the European Union as well through Operation Safe Corridor and other initiatives. And then, of course, we need to look at what does it take to address some of the underlying root causes here. You know, maybe one of the reasons that we have seen a protracted crisis in the Northeast in the first place was the lack of opportunities for youth in particular. So creating those opportunities, you know, going back to having the thriving businesses that we have seen in the area in the past is absolutely vital. And demonstrating how areas can be stabilized, including through the stabilization initiatives of the United Nations, supported by the European Union alongside Germany and others, you know, to build new, safe societies with proper opportunities and access to basic social services. And of course, we do this in very close collaboration with the governors of the area. In fact, it could not be done without them, because it doesn't make sense to have schools without teachers, and it doesn't make sense to have health clinics without health workers. So there is a very significant role to play for the government, state governments as well in all of this. And making sure that people are kept safe. And that takes, of course, having security measures in place, including policing, etc. So it does take a comprehensive package. Unfortunately, there's no quick fix. There's no easy solution. But we do believe that it is vital that more is being done. Now, the European Union has already provided an additional very significant support to what we call the Borno Package, which is now being rolled out. And as we are identifying what should be the priorities of the future, we have included this on top of our priority as well, priority list as well, not only in the northeast, but also looking at the northwest and elsewhere in the country. Now, the situation in Chad was really very sad to watch. We have had excellent collaboration with the now demised president, and may his soul rest in peace. Our High Representative Vice President Borrell was amongst the most senior international leaders to attend the funeral as well. And of course, we are working with the interim government that has been established with a clear view to returning to civilian rule, as it is stated now, within a period of 18 months. And the European Union is assisting as well to see that that transition is taking place. We have noticed that also Nigeria has offered, to mediate in these processes. The role of Chad in the wider region is really important as well, of course, in particular when it comes to the security of the Lake Chad Basin region and the northeast Nigeria as well. So we must be aware that regional solutions need to be found as well to these predominantly regional problems. I think I will leave it at that. And then there was an initial question on the list of products that I think I would ask my trade lead to answer. And then if Madame Cécile or Bart would...
My ambassador, but I'll try to speak over the crowd of microphones. So the question was about the African Continental Free Trade Area, and specifically the Nigerian government's approach towards the list of prohibited goods. And if we're talking about... Thank you. Yes. So the Nigerian approach by imposing restrictions on imports into Nigeria. There is this list of prohibited goods, but if we're talking about that, we should also include in there some of the measures taken by the central bank on restricting, for example, the dairy sector, and there are other measures being rolled out as we speak. Of course, the EU does not consider this to be global best practice, all right? Any deliberate attempts to put in an obstacle to trade is not what we would call best practice. And in an environment where you are entering into a new preferential trade arrangement with the continent, one has to question the validity and also the economic interest of doing that. Because there are always two sides to the coin. If Nigeria continues to have restrictions at import, it cannot expect that other countries will not react in a similar manner to whatever goods are being exported from Nigeria. But of course, in trade, the situation is always a bit more complicated. The EU has actually raised some of these issues within the framework of the WTO. When Dr. Okonjo-Iweala actually came to Nigeria a few weeks ago, she actually raised these issues, I think, with the governor of the central bank and with other members of the government. Our concern on the EU side, of course, is our economic operators, our exporters. We export goods to Nigeria, and we find difficulties being imposed on them. But we have to recognize the policy space of the Nigerian government. The ambassador has already mentioned earlier the need and the recognition that the government here is trying to create jobs, diversify the economy, And one aspect to that is this backward integration approach, and the EU also supports that. So we're very much sort of in the middle. We recognize the difficulties for people who are trying to trade with Nigeria, but on the other hand, we are also very keen to support the idea of introducing diversified industries here. And some of the members of the European Business Organization are actively involved in doing that. Thank you.